Hey guys, welcome back to the Blue playthrough. So today I'm going to talk about World War II, the US connection to the Mafia. So let's set up what the Mafia is. Well, the Mafia is something that comes from Sicily. There's two different forms of crime syndicate families in Italy. You have the Mafia and La Cosa Nostra. La Cosa Nostra comes from Naples, but they lost a war with the Mafia when the first official Mafia family went to war with them, and I can't remember their names right now, but the Mafia sets itself up in New York during Prohibition. They're this big, powerful organization. They control a lot of the unions, and one of their big leaders is a man by the name of Lucky Luciano. His actual name, he was born Salvatore Luciano, but changed his name to Charles Luciano. Now, why is he called Lucky? Well, he cheated death a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. This man should have died several times during his lifetime, but he continued living on. He's one of the founding members in the Mafia's organization known as Murder, Inc. And when World War II started, a lot of the mafiosos felt like they had to do their patriotic duty in a way, because they're not only going to defend America, they're going to defend Italy against Mussolini, who wants to wipe out the Mafia. So a lot of the mafiosos will sign up, they'll serve, they're going to be veterans of World War II, but Luciano is in jail. He's in jail for either murder or fraud, I can't remember which. But in 1942, America has a ship known as the SS Normandy that sinks in the New York docks, and they think it's sabotage, because it randomly caught fire while they were trying to convert it to a troop transporter. Well, Luciano... I'm checking something out. Is it focusing? Okay, there we go. So Luciano is in jail. He controls the New York docks, and nobody's talking to the police, so they have to approach Luciano. So Luciano, in 1942, will strike a deal with the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence saying, okay, I'll tell all my Mafia guys to make sure none of your other ships should sink, and we'll protect them with our own lives. But in the end, you're going to free me, and you're going to send me back to Sicily even though I committed a lot of crimes. So reluctantly, the U.S. agrees. So Luciano gives his blessing, and Albert Anastasio, who is actually free during this time, enforces Luciano's ruling. So nobody on the New York docks, there's not going to be strikes, there's not going to be anything but work going on to help the war effort. And during this time period, you have a organization known as the German Bund that forms. The German Bund is actually a group of people who, before the war started, they were Nazi supporters, and it was like the American Nazi Party pretty much. And they're going to be challenged by the Jewish mafiosos. One of the two biggest ones are Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. Now, Jewish mafiosos don't lay down and take it. No, instead they're going to fight the Bund. And oftentimes they'd go to these Bund rallies and attack Bund members, but the police never did anything to them because, one, we wanted the Nazis to go away, and two, they weren't doing anything technically illegal in the police eyes because they were only defending themselves. There's a famous quote from Meyer Lansky that says, "My ancestors may have laid down and taken their fate, but I will be explicit if I'm going to let these guys run me out of my own town." So they actually went around and attacked the Bund rallies. Now, going back to 1945 or 42, where we have Luciano also has his men send messages home saying, okay, when the Americans come in, stop fighting them, otherwise we're going to kill you. So that was sent home to the Italian soldiers, and when Operation Torch goes down, where they go up through Italy, the Italian army stops fighting. And a lot of people said that they marched through with a purple flag with an L on it, which was the symbol of Luciano. So there's a theory going around that Lucky Luciano actually helped with the war effort because he kind of created this ability to stop the Italian army from fighting, which meant we were only fighting the Nazis. Now, why is this important is because a lot of American organizations kind of deny this. So, like, for a very long time period, the Naval Office denied they made a deal with Luciano, even though he's going to be freed right after the war and sent back to Sicily. And it's very interesting to kind of think about this, because did we actually make a deal with the Mafia? And why? I mean, the Mafia is known for its notorious ways of drugs and killing people and causing riots and doing what they want because they feel like they're above the law. And if we did, was it the right move? Well, in a way, you can't argue it was the right move. Because you can look at men like Meyer Lansky, who is Jewish, who had relatives who ended up dying in the Holocaust, and see his actions attacking the Nazi Bund in America as a way of fighting the Nazis on his own terms. And it's pretty interesting to look at that perspective of the U.S. war effort, the dealings with the Mafia. And Lansky actually probably is one of the more interesting of the Jewish Mafia. Don't get me wrong, I do like Bugsy Siegel too. But I find Meyer Lansky to be more interesting just because he was the type of guy who did what he did because he felt it was right, not because it was easy. Like, Bugsy Siegel took money from people, he embezzled, he did all this other stuff, whereas Lansky, even though he wasn't an angel, he oftentimes tried to do the right thing by whoever he was working with. Now, you can also argue that the Mafia wasn't patriotic, but I will argue against that because I feel like a lot of these mafiosos, especially those who signed up to fight, were patriotic towards America. They loved their adopted country. And I have a personal connection to World War II, being half Italian. My grandfather actually fought in World War II. His name was Vincenzo. He came from a little town in Italy known as Dragatica. And growing up, I always kind of joked around that my grandfather had Mafia connections. Like, never really thought anything of it, but apparently my mom says he kind of did when she was younger, because he used to run errands for people and he'd never told anybody what those errands were. And it's quite possible that he did have some sort of connection. But my grandfather was a very patriotic man. He literally lied about his age to join, and he was on a battleship in the Pacific, which was the USS Sutherland, and he loved that ship. He was so proud of being a veteran. He had the tattoo of the Navy anchor. He had the Anchors Away song that he used to play all the time. And it was one of those ironic things because during this time period, many Americans distrusted Italians and Germans because they felt like they're a part of this war, they're the cause of it, and that they are actually spying on us. So it was a ballsy move for the U.S. To even go to Luciano thinking maybe he could help and thinking that he's not a spy. But they probably did it because they knew Luciano did not like Mussolini and would want any way to get back at Mussolini for imprisoning other mafiosos back in Italy. Now, Luciano actually is the one who started bringing in other cultures to the Mafia. He actually was the first mafioso to recognize a Jewish mafia. He actually was the one who mentored Meyer Lansky. And I think it's really interesting that we don't really talk about like the Jewish mafia fighting the Nazis in America, because I feel like it'd be really interesting to talk about like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel and how they'd go after these guys. And I'd really think it'd be fun if you guys would want to watch a video where I talk about the Mafia during World War II, where it's just where I research it and I talk about like who's who fought where, what did they actually do, is there validity to these stories, is there not, what are the historical arguments. And I think it's a lot of fun just to think about like how cool would that be to find out that we actually did ally ourselves with Luciano, and we actually did ask the Mafia for help because that would make a lot of cool sense because of how the Italian troops acted. But at the same time, I kind of don't want to know because I feel like it's going to bring more questions and answers for me. And I'd rather, I don't know, it'd be interesting. Now, going back to the distrust of Italians and Germans, during World War I and World War II, many people, whoever we were fighting against, they would just distrust them and they'd attack them. Now, this is where you kind of get the term Guido, and in New Jersey they kind of adapted it because it used to be a derogatory term towards Italians. And they used to call them Guidos, meaning that they're not Americans and they could be spies. And during this time, you have sauerkraut once again being renamed freedom cabbage. Excuse me. You have a lot of weird things that kind of go on. And, I mean, it's a lot of fun to talk about for me because I love World War II era stuff. So I think I'm going to end it off here today, guys. Please comment down below what you want me to talk about next week. What part of World War II are you interested in? Do you want me to talk about the medical advances? Do you want me to talk about maybe people in World War II? Give me some ideas. Well, bye, guys.